am what I am. I am my own special creation. So come take a look. Give me the hook or the ovation. It's my world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say, hey world, I am what I am. In 1983, Jerry Herman wrote the music and the lyrics, and Harvey Fierstein wrote the book for the smash Broadway musical La Cage Fall. This prideful anthem song was empowering and an inspiration to me and so many others in my generation. 1983 was also the year that I helped in the creation of Cleveland's LGBTQ plus synagogue, Chevre Tikva, which means Friends of Hope. A small group of very closeted, very nervous, like I am, and yet very committed Jews wanted to find our place to be counted in the Jewish community and beyond. Yes, to be counted. This week in the Torah, we read the Parsha Naso. The word Naso actually means to count. Parsha Naso continues on the path that was introduced in Parsha Bamidbar last week. It is the story of the census, in which God instructs Moses to count the people in the desert, tribe by tribe, with the tribe of the Levites set apart. The Levites had a very special responsibility for the care of the Mishkan, or the tabernacle, or the dwelling place. Of note, in just 2 weeks, our beloved congregation will be known as Mishkan Or, our dwelling place of light. The Mishkan is mentioned several times in this parsha. The Levites were responsible for the daily care of the Mishkan, with different tasks assigned to different families of the Levite family. One of the families was Gershon. If you'll indulge me for a sidebar that I found moving as I studied and prepared for this sermon. My surname is Levine, and I, like many others whose surnames are Levy, Leviton, Levison, we come from the Levite tribe. My given name is Gregg. I'm named after my great-grandmother Gittel. When the rabbis gave me a Hebrew name, it was Gershon. So I especially just love this parsha. I think it's appropriate this Pride Shabbat, as congregations around the world read from Parshat Naso, where we are directed to count, that we do an actual accounting of where the Cleveland LGBTQ plus Jewish community is in the past, where it presently stands, and where it may be going in the future. Those in my generation generally count the whole LGBTQ community as gay. Those who are younger call it the queer community. I'm just not comfortable calling it that in my generation, so please indulge me. I'll simply call it the gay community. I was not the only Jewish gay Clevelander who was inspired by the anthem, I Am What I Am. And in that same year, a group of us secretly met, sharing only our first names, in the basement of our founder's home. There was no internet, there were no emails, there was only through good old-fashioned word of mouth that we made this happen. Yes, there had been gay synagogues in LA and San Francisco and Washington, but never in a Midwestern city like Cleveland. At that time, there were no institutions, there were no congregations, there were no rabbis, there were no teachers that were openly accepting and loving of gay Jews. Thankfully, as we know, slow acceptance emerged, and our secret, struggling congregation eventually came out, joining the Reform movement. We grew to be a thriving congregation of over 80 family units, and our early activism was to support our family and friends who were dying of the AIDS epidemic. We raised money and awareness. Sadly, much of our early financial sustenance came from members who were rejected by their families and left their legacy funds to our synagogue. We marched together in Washington, D.C. We did social, educational, and religious events. For many years, student rabbis for Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati joined us on Shabbat and high holidays. Eventually, we were able to hire our own permanent part-time rabbi. Actually, I'm very proud Chevre Tikva produced 2 rabbis. One of them is here, Rabbi Ben Sturman, and we're very proud that he's the product of Chevre Tikva. By the way, Ben Sturman was one of 7 clergy that participated in our wedding ceremony. Of course, Ken or Kathy sang beautifully at our wedding as well. This is something Howard and I could never have imagined 39 years ago when we met at Chevre Tikva. As our beloved congregation is about to merge with Fairmont Temple, I really want to share some relevant history. Almost from the very beginning of Chevre Tikva's existence, we had a very strong, loving relationship with Anshi Chesed, people of loving kindness, Fairmont Temple. For example, on Simchas Torah, Chevre Tikva had but 1 Torah. Where did we get our second Torah? From Fairmont Temple. When we urgently needed a rabbi, when a congregant died, clergy from Fairmont Temple, they were always there for us. When it became clear that Chevre Tikva best continue not as an independent congregation, it became a chavara of Fairmont Temple. Today, former Chevre Tikva members are fully integrated into the general fabric of that congregation. So where do we stand today for the gay Jewish community in Cleveland? I have to tell you, my biggest concern is for young people attending Jewish Orthodox day schools. My heart goes out for the young kid at Hebrew Academy playing soccer who may be called faggot or gay. I don't know where a teenager goes from Fuchs Mizrahi who may be thinking, I may be gay, I may be lesbian, or God forbid, trans. I feel so bad for my dear Orthodox friend. Some years ago, she asked her rabbi to share the simcha of her son's engagement to a nice Jewish man to the list of other simchas traditionally announced each week from the bima. But her rabbi refused. How painful to be rejected by your own community. Where we are in the Orthodox community for acceptance is probably where we were in the Reformed community 30 years ago and where the conservative movement was 10 years ago. We have a lot of work to do. On a positive note, a local group called Makom was created in 2016 to address gay Orthodox Jews, their families, and allies with programs and safe space. Just the mere fact that this organization exists has had a critical impact to those in the observant community, and dare I say, maybe even saved lives. Another issue for today of concern is the subject of intersectionality. Post the tragedy of October 7th, we gay Jews, who also care deeply about so many other progressive social justice issues, do not feel welcome in these spaces. We, in fact, feel threatened. We worry. Can we Jews march safely in pride parades without being drowned out with pro-Palestinian shouts? Not being welcome in these and other progressive spaces, simply because we're Jewish, simply because we love Israel, is blatant anti-Semitism. Some good news. Some good news about our Federation. I recall several meetings with Federation leadership pre-gay marriage and having very, very difficult conversations about Federation adding domestic partnership benefits. I'll just say it wasn't easy. Frankly, I did not feel welcome at the Federation. Today, that has all changed. As the past chair of the Community Relations Committee of the Federation, I see total acceptance today. In fact, at the Community Relations Committee annual meeting, the keynote speaker was a young gay social media activist from Israel who spoke in front of an audience of over 300 people at our very synagogue. And the Federation continues to sponsor J-Hub, which has in its mission an outreach to unaffiliated and intermarried Jews, and I'm proud that it currently has an LGBTQ plus affinity group. Wow, we've made such progress. Finally, where do I see the future of the community? Nationally, there are currently over 500 anti-gay pieces of legislation either being considered or just recently passed targeting our community in this country. Politicians are generally going against the most vulnerable in our community, young trans kids. And our Ohio legislation has passed some of the most hateful bills in the country. Many of us never dreamed that Roe v. Wade would go down and the devastating effect it would have on so many women and families across America. I can assure you that many of us in the gay community are deadly scared that this Supreme Court will overturn Obergefell versus Hotchkiss, which puts my marriage with my husband Howard at risk. But I'm an optimist. I'm reminded by what Martin Luther King said. He often said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." I see the day when our country passes laws that enshrine full equality for our community, full equality in employment, housing, credit, education, public spaces, and services. I see this day, but it is not here. And our congregation must continue to fight ever-growing hatred against the gay community, fight hatred against the Jewish community, and fight all hatred. Parsha Naso begins with the final counting of the census of the Levites, and it ends with God instructing Aaron and his sons to recite the blessings over the people. We know this blessing. It's the Birkat Kohanim. It's a blessing we're all familiar with. It says, "May God bless you and keep you. May God shine his countenance upon you and be gracious to you. And may God grant you the gift of peace." I pray on this Pride Shabbat that God lift up his countenance to give our community, the LGBTQ plus community, a place of love, not hate, and a place of full equality. And let us all say, Amen.